Sunday after the Premier League is finished. I'm StattoJoe. I am joined by the Enigma Luke Sherwin.
Well, Joe, you see, the problem with Arsenal is they try to walk the ball into the back of the net. What a
Oh,
pleasure to be
great.
here. It's great. It's Sunday evening. The Premier League is finished. What a day of football.
It was great, wasn't it? The drama, the excitement, the fans being back, and the atmosphere at those games. Because we watched. Full disclosure to everybody watching, we and listening, we only watched because you can't watch 10 games at the same time unless you're a BBC. So we watched Liverpool versus Crystal Palace, Chelsea versus Aston Villa. Sorry, Aston Villa versus Chelsea, I should say, and Leicester versus Tottenham. So we watched the top four race. Really, the only thing that needed to be decided, apart from the Europa Conference League, and it was wild, wasn't it? It was wild.
It was. And that's the main topic of discussion for today for us is
Mm-hmm.
this top four race. The title was decided. Second place was decided as well. Relegation was all confirmed. And so up for grabs today were European places.
Mm-hmm.
So we had top four race, which was a lot more interesting than I think a lot of people expected it to be going into today. I think if you had a month ago said that this would be an exciting top four race and we're unsure of who's going to finish in it, I would have said no, unlikely. But we saw three teams actually competing to try and get in the top four, and that was
Mm-hmm.
nice because it gave today stakes and it made today enjoyable to watch. We saw three games, all actually, had goals in them, which was
Mm-hmm.
nice. A good few goals. All the teams went for it, especially like Leicester Tottenham, another big game that actually delivered in terms of quality with a lot of goals coming through. And yeah, a good day all around for the top four race. And we
Yeah.
finished the end of the day with Chelsea and with Liverpool in the top four, with poor Leicester City dropping out into fifth place.
Uh,
Joe, how are you feeling?
I'm gutted. I'm gutted. I
Joe?
wanted Leicester to get top four. Um, they are the team in the Premier League this season who have been in the top four for the longest period of time this season. So they've spent 242 days in the top four, which is the most of any of the teams. That's including United and City. Um, yeah, it's gotten like I feel gutted for them. I really do. Um, Ultimately, results against the result against Newcastle really hurt them. The result today hurt them. The result against Chelsea during the week hurt them. They did struggle towards the end of the season, had those nerves, and I think ultimately that coupled with Liverpool's fantastic form in their last 10 games is what has ultimately meant that they've dropped out of the top four at the very last stage. Obviously, they were fifth coming into today's game, but um, up until about 10 minutes to go, they were looking like they were going to the Champions League, and then Gareth Bale shows up with two pretty poor goals, and there you have it, folks. Liverpool and Chelsea in the top four.
Absolutely. So going into today, we had that scenario in place. We had Liverpool and Chelsea in the top four. They were the ones going into today who were there. Chelsea on 67 points, Liverpool on 66 points, with a greater goal difference than Leicester, who were also on 66 points.
Mm.
And so it was an interesting one because there were countless different scenarios that could happen that would leave different teams in different positions. So what transpired? Effectively, we can look at Chelsea to start with because they were third at the start of the
Mm-hmm.
day. They were
Yep.
the ones that I think most people looked at and said, realistically, Chelsea will probably get top four.
Yep.
They're 1 point ahead than the other two. Surely they'll get top four. Chelsea went into today's game against Aston Villa, a team that, Aston Villa have been okay this season. They
Yeah. Yeah.
started off really, really well. They looked like they were doing well. Jack Grealish was doing bits. Jack Grealish got injured and their season changed. So,
Mm-hmm.
Joe, what on earth then happened today with Villa and Chelsea?
It's a weird one. I was just looking quickly. Chelsea had 23 shots at goal and had more shots on target than Villa had total shots. Just not great defensively overall from Chelsea today. So we had it on, and obviously you're flicking between, so you don't quite grasp what happens and see everything. But Villa's first goal was a miss hit essentially into the top corner. I mean, it looked great to be fair, and then Mendy wrecked himself off the post. Then there was a penalty, which was a silly challenge, really, and I think it was a penalty overall. And then Chelsea, then for the last half an hour, just battered Villa. They just were going for it. There was, a bit of heated moments. Aspilicueta being sent off for punching Grealish in the face, I think. Basically, he got sent off for that. And they kept knocking at the door. They kept knocking at the door. They were pressing them. They were just so many shots. Like, of their 23 shots, 14 of those were in the second half. So they really were. And Villa only managed one shot. That was the penalty in the second half. So really, Chelsea dominated the game, even stats wise. They had over 70% possession, more corners, a lot more passes than Villa. Like everything in that, you can see if you look at the stats, it's just like everything is Chelsea dominated. But I think it was one of those games. It was nerves. I think it was nerves and nerves and excitement. I think was what got the better of them today.
Well, it's a classic case of Chelsea when they haven't been able to win this season under Tuchel. In the last few games, we've seen a different kind of Chelsea team that's dominated as per, but yet hasn't been able to get the job done, and defensively has looked more fragile. Why is this? I'm not 100% sure, but I do ask the question of why both Reece James and Cesar Azpilicueta play. Why do those two start in this game? Why do you not just start with the centre back like Kurt Zouma at the right side of the three at the back? I'm not too sure. But one of the main differences, I think, today and probably will be in the Champions League final is Kante. Kante being injured is massive for Chelsea because Jorginho is there and he does a job. He passes. He's fine at that. Billy Gilmour is probably more similar to Jorginho than he would be to Kante. And Mateo Kovacic, no harm to him, is not anything like Kante in terms of quality, what his influence on the pitch, his general nature as a player. Today had a really poor game. Kovacic, countless bad challenges, not good. Just passing wasn't like up to scratch. And the front three for Chelsea didn't look great either. Timo Werner offside as always, played all right.
Offside.
But Mason Mount and Pulisic didn't have good games. Kai Havertz came on and played badly. Not even that he had an okay game. Played badly. Mikey, lovely to see. Thanks for joining me.
Good evening.
But yeah, Chelsea just couldn't get it done, and Villa, I think, were lucky to get anything from this game in one sense.
Absolutely, 100%. You're so right, 100%.
Because the goal, so Andy, my housemate, was present, and he was like, "Oh, great finish, top corner." And I was like, "I know you're joking, but it triggers me still, because it was such a terrible hit. Brilliantly worked. You've got to give them credit.
Really well
clearly
worked.
Yeah. Training ground, and they've hit the ball in. Traore's got in the right position, but Traore does Traore things and hits the ball averagely, and so it goes in, and then they get a penalty, which probably was a penalty, but very fortunate. Chelsea get a goal back, which is good for them, but just too little, too late. Couldn't get the job done.
And ultimately, for them, thankfully, it didn't matter. Because then I think logically the next best place to talk about is the Leicester game, because the Leicester game dictated what happened throughout this afternoon, because Leicester were the team that were chasing. So I think I would recommend anybody, even if you've watched the football today, make sure and watch Match of the Day if you can, because they'll do it. Like, what they'll do is they'll do highlights from the three games, and they'll kind of overlap them. So they'll kind of move between the games and show highlights as they happen. So I think definitely well worth watching if you want to get the full picture of what happened today. But yeah, good evening, Josh. Hope you're well. Welcome. I'm sure you're delighted after Liverpool's result today. Welcome on in. But anyway, we travelled to the King Power Stadium. Great. I just want to highlight quickly that all the fans who arrived were given a free drink and a free brownie and a free banner clapper from the owners, which you do love to see. You talked about before, Luke, you talked last week about how the Leicester owners show a positive side to owning football clubs after the whole Super League stuff. So I thought that was really cool. But anyway, they went to
Yeah.
this game knowing that they realistically had to win against Tottenham to secure top four, and even then they had to have results go in their favour. They opted to go two up front. Look, do you think that was a mistake in the end?
Always. We've said it countless times over the last few weeks. Leicester don't play well with two up top. And in
Yeah.
this game, despite the fact they were 2-1 up at one stage, they never really looked like they were going to hold on. They never really played particularly well. They scored 2 goals from penalties. Both goals were penalties.
Yeah.
Yes, they count. They absolutely do. But when you lose 4-2 in the end because you can't score any other way, penalties are not a great way to go.
No.
Two up top didn't work. Iheanacho, he just looks so off the pace at the moment. I don't know what's happened to him. I don't know if it's, he's just got insomnia these days and can't sleep. He looks sluggish. He just can't get it done. Jamie Vardy scored twice, but didn't play well. I don't think. Like he did okay to get the penalties. The first one was soft. The second one,
Both arguably were soft.
yeah, the second one wasn't really much better.
They're both penalties, but they're both soft penalties. Like
Yeah,
that's yeah.
absolutely. And again, Leicester probably could have held out for a draw,
Mm.
but sadly for them, Kasper Schmeichel had one of the worst games I think I've ever seen him
Oh,
play. He really was not good. I don't know what happened to him.
he bottled it today. I don't think
Oh,
Brendan
yeah.
Rodgers bottled it today. I think Kasper Schmeichel bottled it today.
Well,
A 5.4 rating there from Kasper Schmeichel, by the way. So
I
that's
think he might have bottled it a little bit, Brendan Rodgers, today by
yeah.
playing two up front. Like, Iheanacho has not been playing well. Why would you not? Also, Mark Albrighton shouldn't have been playing. Ricardo Pereira should have been playing at right back. Why not play Ricardo Pereira? Why not have Dennis Pratt and Ayoze Perez start?
Mm.
No, well, maybe just one of them, Pratt or Perez instead of Iheanacho. Give it a go with one striker. Um, yeah, I think Brendan he made that mistake today. Josh, you have told us before that Brendan's a bottler, but
And I'll agree, I've said it. I think he is a bit of a bottler at times. Like I do agree with you, Josh. I think I was really happy for him when they won the FA Cup because I thought that's a big deal. He's finally been successful. As in, you can't deny that Leicester realistically are overachieving with the squad they have, right? But I think that unfortunately now that's 2 seasons in a row where they've bottled top four on the last day of the season, essentially.
yeah,
And the players look nervous, like watching the game. Spurs probably. I mean, I think maybe a 2-2 would have made more sense to me just watching the game. But Harry Kane, he scored the first goal, getting him the golden boot. So congratulations to him. Stunning, a great goal actually as well. As you said, time and time again. Look, today you're like, that's behind him.
yeah. Tottenham did
Yeah.
well. Tottenham did really well, and Brian Mason deserves zero credit whatsoever because all he's done is told this Tottenham team to go out and play football.
Yeah.
Something Mourinho should have done, but didn't.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't tell them at all to go out and play. He told them to sit back and try and score in the counter. Whereas Ryan Mason said, "Oh, shackles, let's get rid of them, play some football," and that's what they did today. They were terrible defensively, as they always
Mm-hmm.
are, but going forward, they have exceptional players. If this was Harry Kane's last game in a Tottenham shirt, and if this was Gareth Bale's last game in a Tottenham shirt, nice for them. Nice for
Fair play.
Tottenham fans.
Fair play.
Happy
Yeah.
days. They've done well there.
Mm-hmm.
But in general, Tottenham, an average team at the moment, really average. A couple of average players, surrounded by a few bad players with a
Mm-hmm.
couple of world class players. Tottenham got the result and, yeah, grounded out.
Yeah. Yeah. That's probably fair. I think I always felt if Leicester win this game 2-1, having scored two penalties because it was 2-1, like questions will be asked because they'll
Yeah.
only have scored their goals from penalties. They won't have scored from open play. But Spurs had just went on, took advantage at the end of the fact that Leicester had to go for the game, which was always going to happen. I think once it got 2-2, Leicester couldn't afford to draw, so they had to go for it. And Spurs were always probably going to pick them off. Then they've got the players to do that.
Yeah.
I know they're not a great team, but they do have the players to do that, and that's ultimately what happened at the end with Bale's second goal. Anyway,
Yeah, and today's a prime example of that phrase that they sometimes use in football punditry of attacks win games, but defenses win championships.
yeah,
And that's what happened. That's what happened today because Tottenham have an unbelievable attack that on its day is better than nobody else, but defensively, really, really poor. If Kane goes, could lead to an exodus. Mikey says here in the chat. And I think you're right.
yeah.
I
So
think
yeah,
if Kane leaves, the heads drop. All of the heads drop. If Gareth Bale then goes back, the heads drop. Cream always rises to the top. In relation to
into the top of the league. Maybe I have no idea. It's just a great
Leicester
phrase. A great phrase.
losing, Tottenham, I don't know. But yeah, I think if Kane leaves and Gareth Bale leave, Dele Alli's going to look around and think, why am I here?
I think you might do
Why?
that anyway. I think you might do
I,
that anyway.
I think he might, especially if he's getting with Pep's daughter. He might just head over there. But Son as well. Will if Kane leaves, Son will be. Oh, as Mikey's just said, I've just seen
Mhm.
that. Don't see Son's saying this year. If that happens, you're right. If Son looks and sees Kane and Gareth Bale gone, he's going to be good. Regulon is on. Is he loan or is he permanent? I'm not
I
100%
think they
sure.
signed him. I think they signed him, and Bale was loan, wasn't it? Was it like
Yes,
25 million for
something
regular
like
on
that.
maybe?
Yeah, I think Tottenham just need to rebuild. Daniel Levy has the money to
Oh, aye.
rebuild, but they
Yeah,
need to put the effort in, get a good manager, get somebody to build a squad. You've got solid players in Højbjerg, Harry Winks, Davidson Sanchez. They're fine players,
yeah, yeah.
but Spurs are just a bit average, aren't they?
They're they're the guilty singers of the Premier League. They're extremely mediocre.
So
Um,
true.
yeah, I mean, look, they have their days, and I think Jose will be gutted that they even got seventh, probably because like he'll be like, oh, they let go of me, and they still managed just about do it. Um, I mean, it's kind of a meme going into the Europa Conference League, because what the thing is, it's actually a lose-lose situation for Spurs, right? Because if they do, so let's say they do keep Kane and then keep their main squad, right? And they go into the Europa League or Europa Conference League, sorry. It's a lose-lose because they're in like the like the Irish League of Europe, but then also if they don't win it with that squad, that'll be embarrassing because like
Yeah,
there won't be any really great teams in that competition. So like it's lose lose. If Kane stays for Spurs, it's lose lose. If he leaves and other players leave, they'll be like, well, we're not the same squad, we're not the same team. This is some players' first experience of Europe. Blah blah blah. Even them though, Spurs is a big name. They're one of the Super League Six. Remember, they're going into the Europa Irish League, and that's just a difficult situation for them.
it is.
And then
If if
Leicester in the Europa
Kane
League. So
if Kane leaves, who do they sign? Let's say
Joe McCormick.
hypothetically, you've got 150 million.
Yeah,
You've got some players sticking about. Obviously, you'll have Lloris probably will stay.
yeah.
You'll have Matt Doherty, Davidson Sanchez, and maybe Eric Dyer with Sergio Reguilon at the back. You've got Højbjerg, Harry Winks, maybe Dele Alli. You've got Bergwijn. You've got Lamela. You've got Carlos Vinicius. That sounds like a bang average team altogether.
I think Vinicius
But
was on loan.
if
I think
Vinicius is on loan, then they've got Troy Parrott, their young Irish striker, to come in with mad potential. Who do they sign? Because you can't sign 12 players.
who wants. The first question is who would want to sign for Spurs. This is where I think it's going to be interesting because how many people realistically that are already in a mid-tier Premier League club are going to look to Spurs unless they get offered a lot of money, of course. But let's say they don't. Let's say they get offered something similar to what's in their contract right now. Who's really going to look at Spurs and go, yeah, that's a lucrative deal. Oh, they're great. They're an ambitious club who are going to do well in Europe. The answer is they won't. Realistically, if they're in this rebuild phase, I don't know. Like who? Like who goes to Arsenal? Or sorry, not Arsenal, Spurs. We were talking about from West Brom. What you call him? Is it Pereira? His name is.
Pereira. Yeah.
Like, is he someone that would maybe go to Spurs because he's a decent player? Had to essentially carry West Brom this season single-handedly because the rest of them were kind of a championship level squad. Maybe someone like him could go. Maybe an Ademola Lookman. Players like that who are kind of young, up-and-coming comers who have played in the Premier League before, where really they could, a couple of years' experience in the Premier League could try and bring Spurs back up to that level. That's kind of my
I, I
ideas.
I think you're onto something there. Actually, if they were to try and rebuild, there's a couple of players from the relegated teams that wouldn't be bad at all. Josh brings in a really good point here in that they have great infrastructure, and at the moment they don't have an awful lot of money to splash. They have business heads in the club. You're right. They have a great
Mhm.
stadium that attracts people more than playing for Wolves or playing for Newcastle. No offense.
No,
They've got
fair. That's
a bit
fair.
more about them,
Hmm.
and they have been in a Champions League final within the last 3 years, which is pretty big. But I think the likes of him, Mateus Pereira, if you can get him for relatively cheap to come in and fill a Dele Alli hole,
Hmm.
if you can somehow keep Son and Bergwijn either side of him, that's actually pretty good as
Yeah, it's not bad.
three
Not
behind the
bad.
striker. You need to buy a striker though, and getting one of those is not easy. If I'm them, I'm looking at Ivan Toney, from
Yep.
Brentford.
Yep. Yep.
Somebody like that could be a really good shout to get in. Or yeah, I don't even know who else. I think he would be a decent shout actually if Brentford don't go up. If Brentford do go up, I can't see him really leaving.
No, he'll stay at Brentford.
Um,
He'll stay at Brentford.
and other than that, you look at maybe Sheffield United. You think Sander Berger could come in and play alongside
Mm.
Højbjerg and actually do a pretty good job. At Fulham, the only person I look at Fulham and think could have a potential at Tottenham is not even a Fulham player, and it's Ruben Loftus-Cheek could
Yeah.
potentially do a job if he's wanting to leave Chelsea because he's probably not going to get game time, especially in the system that Tuchel plays. Doesn't really have a role for him. He could probably come into Tottenham and actually do a good job.
Hmm.
Um, so they do need to rebuild. Look for some young centre backs or some decent enough centre backs, Premier League proven centre backs. They're not easy to come by. But if I could, you'd inquire about Nathan Ake
Yeah,
from
he
from
didn't really
City.
feature this that much this season.
You'd inquire about him. You'd check. You'd see the availability. You'd check in with a few other teams and try and figure maybe a Michael Keane or
Yeah,
a
yeah, yeah. That's a good shout,
Holgate
actually.
or Holgate or even a Yerry Mina. I think Yerry Mina could do a job alongside Davison Sanchez. That'd be a pretty lethal in terms of heading the ball back
Connor
to. Not
Cody.
always tactically aware, but not bad at all. But yeah, that's Tottenham. Enough about Tottenham though. They were okay today. They finished seventh. Well done, Europa Conference League. You finished above Arsenal. Good job, Tottenham. It's like a trophy. But the final game that we watched alongside those two games that decided the top four race was probably the most comfortable game of the
Oh, by a
day.
mile. By a mile. Oh, yeah.
Apart from one opportunity near the start of the game, which Andros Townsend should have scored,
Should have scored.
but he,
Although Allison did well to close the space, but he really should
yeah,
be scoring that. He really should be
he
scoring
should
that.
be. If he puts any height on that ball, and
Yep.
slightly puts it round him, that's in.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a relatively easy finish. He could have probably even taken his time because it was only Reece Williams that was coming after him.
Hmm.
It's not that scary. But Liverpool came off with a 2-0 victory against Crystal Palace and Roy Hodgson's final game. Before we chat about the game, Roy Hodgson, thank you. Is he going to retire?
Probably. Surely
He's
he must.
old. He's like 73 or something, isn't he?
Yeah, no,
Fair
he's
play
had a
to
good.
him.
He's done well, Crystal Palace.
He has done well. I think he deserves some credit there of taking a team with a lot of average players and
Hmm.
making them consistent enough to stay in the Premier
Yeah,
League. So Roy Hodgson, thank you so much. You've done well there. But Joe, we probably paid the most attention to this game
yeah, yeah,
from the three of them. Probably watched it the most. We had the commentary for this one on
yeah.
rather than the other two. What were your thoughts? And was there a player that stood out as your man of the match?
I think for me, this is one of the most commanding Liverpool performances I've seen in a while in terms of kind of possession of the ball. I mean, Palace, apart from that one chance, like in the second half were non-existent. Liverpool played some really good football today as well. I really thought that was we were seeing glimpses of the Liverpool of last season with some of their play. Their second goal, despite the fact that it was a horrendous finish from Mane, was like last season Liverpool. They played some great football. I'm not really sure about the commentator talking about Salah being unselfish because he still was doing his same stuff. But overall, great performance from Liverpool. Um, bit more lively. We talked about in person when we were watching the game about kind of how they maybe look a bit stale at times, and that links nicely with Josh's question. He says, what do we think that Liverpool need in the transfer market?" We actually did talk about that this afternoon. We were together watching the game, and it's so hard to know because we were just saying the side maybe looks a bit stale. Obviously, it's going to freshen up maybe with Van Dijk and Gomez coming back, but like, do you need to bring in a new attacker or like? There isn't much you would change about Liverpool. Maybe a better bench, better squad players. Like I look at some of the bench players. Like they signed that guy Siximas or whatever his name was. Like weird signing. Minamino was a weird signing. Your man from Preston was a weird signing. Do you know, like they've made some strange decisions for the bench.
Yeah, Liverpool, that's classic. Their transfer policies over
Mm,
this last wee while, though, is that they're kind of doing a city. They don't sign necessarily massive players in the world of football, and Klopp turns them into a decent player. And I think their first team obviously is exceptional.
yeah,
It's really, really good and will challenge and is very, very solid. But outside of that, maybe there is a bit of, um, you know, yeah, a lacking of depth. But then you look midfield wise, they don't really need any central midfielders.
nope,
Yes, Wijnaldum's probably leaving, but you bring Henderson back into midfield alongside Fabinho and Thiago. That's very good. It's a very
yep.
good midfield with balance, with variety, and as backups, you've got Curtis Jones, the Ox, and 90-year-old James Milner. Those
Possibly one of
three,
the best midfields in the Premier League. That when you really
yeah,
think like central
absolutely. In
midfield,
terms of
yeah.
central midfielders, in terms of depth, in terms of that, with central midfield, really good. So they don't really need a central midfielder.
Hmm.
Attack wise, their front three are good.
Hmm.
But yeah, Diogo Jota is great as well. So
Yep.
there's one backup. Origi needs to go. He had good
Yep.
moments. He scored Champions League goals. He's an important player in the club's history, but he's not good enough to play in the Premier League. He's not good enough to play regularly. Jordan Shaqiri, I personally think, not just from a Stoke bias point, is unbelievable. Like he's so good technically. He just doesn't seem to suit this system. So he should probably go too. Minamino, I think, will do well eventually,
Hmm.
but he just needs a bit more time. So if I was them, I'd be looking to improve the attack a little bit.
I
Maybe
think they need a
bring in,
striker.
yeah, a striker. Bring in an actual number nine,
Yeah.
somebody who's going to play like a poacher, effectively, somebody who's going to be able to put the ball in the back of the net. Today we saw Liverpool with 19 shots, only 5 on target again. Like
Hmm.
14 shots off target, guys, come on. Like it doesn't change with
No.
Liverpool. They just keep missing the net. So somebody who can just consistently. Do you know what? Glenn Murray would score goals in this Liverpool team. He's rubbish, but he's a goal scorer.
Hmm.
Somebody like that. Obviously not Glenn Murray because I'm pretty sure he's retired. But somebody like that who will score goals could be decent. But then Firmino does so much of the build-up play. Other than that, you probably need a backup right back.
Yep.
Neco Williams is all right, and if Trent stays fit, it's great. But we saw that this season with Liverpool in that when their main centre backs get injured, panic,
Yep.
big panic. Like
That's they don't have a good enough backup. They don't have good enough backup.
they don't. And if in hypothetical situation, if Van Dijk and Gomez got injured, yes, Matip is so injury prone, he should probably go get in a couple of replacements. But if Robertson had got injured and Trent had got injured this season, their back four would have been so bad, like
I'm
so bad.
so apparently they're not signing Kabak, which I find mental because I actually think he'd be a great player to have on your bench. He's already played for Liverpool. He was pretty solid when he played for them as well. Josh just mentioned there about Mbappe. If that does happen, and it is a possibility, that would be interesting to see how he does in the Premier League. But also, if he plays as well as he has done for PSG, then it would set Liverpool apart. There's no point denying that. Josh says that Kabak wasn't great. He turned like a ship. I think his stats are pretty good. I would need to properly look into it, but like for the games he's played in, Josh, I actually think his stats are good. I think he'd be a good backup to have. Just on Roy Hodgson, very quickly, Mikey was saying there that Roy made Palace a decent outfit, but feels that they're in serious trouble now, though. And I think the question I asked, we're in a group chat of a couple of guys in the Fantasy Premier League, and I kind of was like, who's going to manage Crystal Palace next season? Like, who is there? There's 4 or 5 clubs in the Premier League now. Well, wait, Spurs need a new manager, Wolves need a new manager, and Palace need a new manager. So there's 3 clubs there that need a new manager coming into next season. And I couldn't tell you who would take the job with any of the 3 of them, to be honest. So that'll be interesting to see this summer. I think Roy kind of maybe was the glue in that Palace team, and he had a good brain for football and did a good job. So we could see Palace go down next season because they might lose Zaha. You know, it's a very real possibility. You know,
Yeah, if they lose Zaha, it's a big loss.
Yeah,
Benteke's looked really good
mm-hmm.
in the last few while. He's good to have. Batshuayi being a bit solid, and Eze, but Eze looks like he's going to be injured for a while, which is a big
Yeah,
mess as well.
mm-hmm.
But yeah, Liverpool need to do bits. They need to make some signings. They probably do need to spend a bit of money to get back up and get some squad depth. But I guess we'll just see. And ultimately, they won 2-0. 2 goals. My Luke Sherwin man of the match is Sadio Mane. Best game he's played in a long time. Like a
Oh,
long
he
time.
looked like a different player today.
I don't know
To
if
be
it's the
honest,
fans or what is it. Do you think being a crowd there is Mane the type of player who thrives off crowd noise? Quite
could
possibly.
be.
He could be. But I guess we'll see how he does next season. But obviously, he's a quality player. Just maybe went through a rough patch. Mikey put in the chat actually there. I think Palace have 11 players out of contract this summer. Going to be a huge summer for them, in serious trouble. You know what? I've seen that actually. That they have a lot of players out of contract and some decent enough players as well. I think now is a chance for them to try and get rid of old players. You know, you can't be starting a Premier League game with James Tompkins and Gary Cahill as centre backs under anyone other than either Big Sam or Roy Hodgson. And so they need to try and get in a few players, maybe like search the lower leagues. Take a Nat Phillips off Liverpool if you could. If you could take
Yeah,
a loan for Nat Phillips for next season, whenever Van Dijk and Gomez are back, if you could get Nat Phillips in alongside somebody who's a bit more experienced, probably not Gary Cahill because he's like 90, but somebody who knows what they're doing, it could be decent. Patrick Van Aanholt is great, although he could go in the
yeah.
summer. And yeah, hopefully Palace do all right. They've got some decent players. Really like Kouyaté, really like Riedewald. Phillips is staying put, but like on loan, I think they'd be happy to let him go on a loan.
He's a
He's a
cult
cult
hero.
hero now, in a way. Josh is
Yeah,
saying,
yeah,
you're
yeah.
right, absolutely,
Yes,
but he's
yeah.
not going to get a single minute when Van Dijk, Gomez, and Matip are back,
I
really.
I said to you today, look, that I think Nat Phillips would do well at a lower Premier League club
Yeah,
for a season.
absolutely.
I would 100% take him at Newcastle. I really would, because we play a lot of hoofball, a lot of headers, and he's very strong on under the headers. So I think a season on loan or even leaving Liverpool. I absolutely agree with Josh that he's put in a shift this season for Liverpool. He really has, and fair play to him. What he's been asked to do this season is nothing short of monumental. And replacing Van Dijk, that's no one's ever been able to do that. So he deserves a lot of praise in my opinion. But I do think for next season, it'll be really difficult for him to have spent the season playing for Liverpool to then spend the whole of next season only maybe playing 4 or 5 games. And I think maybe it would be a good idea for his career, where if he is going to become a top centre back in the future when he reaches his prime, I do think a couple of seasons at a lower Premier League club, maybe even a Wolves, something like that. Someone who've got a team who I phrase it as a team who've got mid-table aspirations. I
Yeah.
think would be a perfect club for Nat Phillips to go to.
Yeah, because you look at Curtis Jones as well at Liverpool right now,
Mm,
and Curtis Jones is a good player, but this season has been pretty average.
yeah,
He's young, he's really young, but he hasn't got much game time, even though there's been a lot of injuries, and when he has played, he hasn't looked great. And I wonder if Curtis Jones could do with a loan as well, but it seems they're not going that way. And if they go that with Phillips, I wonder will that harm him? Josh says there Phillips will get a lot of game time. I couldn't disagree more. I just really don't think he will. Like, there's a reason that he was sixth choice before the
mm.
injuries. There's a reason he was not a first team player. Really, he's fine and he's done well, but there's a massive difference between him and Van Dijk and Gomez.
He's probably promoted himself to fourth choice centre back at Liverpool now.
Yeah,
And so maybe they might want to keep him, as Josh said there, for maybe the least less important Champions League games or the FA Cup or the League Cup. And I could see that as well. But I was thinking more from a personal development point of view for Phillips. I think it would be better if he went to a club where he would get Premier League football every week in, week out, starting centre back. I'm just thinking for his career. I think he works well at Liverpool and he's shown that level of solidity. But I'm just thinking more from a point of you know where his personal, like, he might want to stay at Liverpool and that's fine. But I just felt more from a personal
yeah,
development point of view. He's young. Mark Stewart's mentioned there Lovren. Lovren was always kind of hanging on to the fact that he's not really good enough and was still
yeah,
getting game time. Whereas, and he wasn't young in the same way that Nat Phillips is. So I think that's the main difference for me. Totally get that he might stay, and that's fine. But just in my opinion, I think the best move for him would be to go to a mid-table club.
yeah. Nat Phillips is 24. He's
Yeah.
not 18. He's not 18. If he was 18, I think he should be okay to settle.
Mm.
But when you're 24 years old, you should be looking to play at least 30 games a season.
Yeah, because you're coming into your prime in 2 years' time. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. He should be looking to be a starting centre back wherever he goes. If he went to the championship, he'd start every game for 46 games.
I don't know if we want to
And
go there.
that would toughen him up. I don't think he would, and I don't think he should either.
No.
But if he went to a lower Premier League team who needed him, he would start 38 games if he was fit to start 38 games.
Mm.
And that would probably be better for his development of getting to play Premier League regularly, of getting to play, because he's played a lot this season.
Yeah.
He's going to be used to that now.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's going to hate it, I think, when he goes back to being, a part-time player. Van Dijk is nearly number one name on the team sheet when fit. Absolutely right there.
Yep.
There's solid competition there for the other spot. A loan spell would be great to try and prove himself. The following year, try and force out the other centre back. The issue here, though, is he's got a younger, better other centre back. Like, Gomez is younger than Phillips and is
Mm.
better already.
Yeah.
And so as Gomez improves, he's only going to get better. Nat Phillips can't pass a football. Like, like he can't play passing football for a centre back quite like Van Dijk and Gomez can. And so that's why I just don't see a future for him at Liverpool as a starting centre back because he doesn't play that well. But I see him starting for Crystal Palace and playing that style of football.
He could be
I think
massively loved at a club. He could be a massive hero at a club.
absolutely. You look at Ryan Shawcross at Stoke. Okay, left United to come to Stoke,
Mm-hmm.
played for us in the Premier League, was our captain, and is a cult hero, one of our greatest ever players in the Premier League. Doesn't play passing football, was a hoofball type player, and that suited us down to the ground. He was
Mm-hmm.
never going to make it United. Why he had a successful career in the end is because he left and he joined a club that suited him. I think if Nat Phillips did the same, he could be a cult hero and be one of the greatest players that club has ever had.
And I think we wouldn't be having this conversation if we didn't have a pretty decent opinion of Nat Phillips as a player, right? If
Yeah,
we thought he was a bit of he was only playing because he had to, which was the case this season for him. But like, I would, if he wasn't as good as he is, I'd be saying you should stay because you're not going to do as well. Whereas I
yeah,
do believe he's a Premier League centre back, a Premier League level centre back at any of the, like, even a Wolves, Palace, Newcastle, maybe even Southampton, something like that. He can
yeah,
go back to Liverpool reserves at Southampton. But I just think that I really respected the way he played this season, and I think for me personally, I think it'd be great to see him playing regular football, where he's
yeah,
like, and he could develop into a captain of a club. I feel like
yeah.
he's got that type of. Do you know what I mean? So I think that will
Absolutely.
be interesting. that'll be interesting to see.
There's a reason we're not talking about Reece Williams right now.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
think that's exactly your point, is that we don't have a high view of Reece Williams at the
yeah,
moment.
not really.
He hasn't done it since he's come
Yeah,
in, whereas Nat Phillips has and has played pretty well. Today had a good game. Reece
hmm
Williams missed a sitter. And I just think, Nat Phillips is a bit more about him. But we might be proved wrong because I think Reece Williams is a wee bit younger, isn't he?
I think he is. Yeah, yeah. I'll look it up
Let's have
here.
a quick wee look. He is 20, so he's got
Yeah.
4 years still on Phillips there that he could become quite good. But that's the top four. That's that. It was decided
hmm
then. Chelsea lost, but managed to scrape in because Leicester also lost and capitulated towards the end. And Liverpool, Liverpool, who many people had written off, they were top at Christmas, dropped off, played terribly for a while, went down to eighth, but then managed to come back to third place in the Premier League in the end. And
Huge
that
achievement.
a
Huge.
great achievement, a very
Yep.
good achievement for
Huge.
them. I think
Mm.
they should take it home, celebrate, be happy, regroup over summer, try and get a few signings in and go for a title challenge next year,
Yep.
as they hope they would this season. Next season, there's no reason why they can't be going for Man City and trying to reclaim that crown.
Yep. So true. And that leads us into the other Europa League spot was taken by West Ham, who despite only having 30-something% possession, I think, let me double check that for you very quickly. 36% possession and less shots. They beat Southampton 3-0. Again, and this is another factor. I noticed they played at home. I said to you earlier on, Liverpool and Leicester play at home. Chelsea are playing away. Do you think that's going to have an effect? In the end, it didn't really. But had it been the way it was at halftime it was looking like Leicester and Liverpool were going to go through, and it was the fans that were carrying them. Again, massive for West Ham to be playing their final game in front of fans. They weren't in the same jeopardy as they were previously because they'd won during midweek. And they were playing, let's be honest, a very poor Southampton team who have had a horrific second half to the season.
Yeah, could you imagine? Could you imagine Southampton this season without Danny Ings?
I
Like
know, flip.
they would be nowhere near as good as they have been at times. Or James
Mm,
Ward-Prowse. Love James Ward-Prowse. Think he's a really good player. Does really well from dead ball situations. Has his best goal scoring season ever this season. With the number of free kicks he's scoring, it's not surprising. But
mm,
Southampton, just never really got out of the blocks and just played a pretty poor game. Mikey was on the other day chatting through Mikel Antonio, and today was one of those frustrating games from him.
mm.
Um, West Ham weren't great. You're right, Mikey. But they did the business, and that's what is good. That's what's good for them. They got their European tour. Some decent enough performances. Thomas Souček, one of the greatest signings West Ham have
Oh,
made in recent
yeah.
seasons. He's been really good. Jesse Lingard didn't have an unbelievable game, but other players did to make up for that. Cresswell
Mm.
played well. Fabianski had a good game. I really like Kufal at right back, but he didn't play that well. But West Ham did the job, got a 3-0 win in the end, which is probably a little bit generous, as Mikey might have pointed out.
It
You
makes
know,
them look far better than they were, I think.
it does. It really
Yeah.
does. But yeah, if I'm a Southampton fan, I would be frustrated at how badly they've fallen, how
Mm,
quickly this season has gone to pot. In their last 20 games, there's only a couple of victories, which isn't good.
mm-hmm.
And I don't know where you go from a Southampton perspective. Because if I'm Tottenham, I'm looking at Danny Ings. There it is. That's who I'm looking at. If I'm Tottenham, I'm looking at Danny Ings to come in and lead the line and score a
Interesting.
goal because
Interesting.
he's very good. Danny Ings has been really good this season. And the James Ward-Prowse. If I'm Tottenham, I wouldn't be surprised to see both of those players leave. Although I think James Ward-Prowse loves the club, so that is nice. But an average game of football.
Danny Ings is only 28. I
Yeah,
thought he was older.
exactly.
That might be a good sign for them. Yeah, I honestly, with the games that we didn't see, I tried to quickly watch through the highlights. Highlights don't give you really a full indication of how the game was, so I'm not going to sit here and take off the ratings necessarily how people play, because I think ratings flatter players who score. For example, Pablo Fornals was 9.7. Mikey, you're in the chat. I'm sure you can tell me right now that he didn't play a 9.7 out of 10 game. Obviously scored 2 goals, but I'm not going to sit here and go, oh, he was outstanding today, because with all the other games that were on, I didn't get a chance to catch any of the games. Just briefly saw highlights. Overall, it looks to me, based on ratings, I'm going completely off ratings, that Southampton played a very, very average game, and West Ham seemed to play a better game. But we know from Mikey that isn't actually true. And that's the whole thing about stats, and that's kind of why I set up the page in the first place. Was stats don't actually always tell you what happens, and I think it's really fascinating. You're almost getting a 15-minute case study here, because when we go through the games, we're going to get impressions that come from the stats, and I look at the stats, and to be fair, actually Southampton dominated a lot of them. More possession, more shots at goal, although West Ham managed more shots on target. But the big one for me, and this is quite interesting to me, is West Ham had 4 big chances in that game and scored from 3 of them, that's actually fantastic. Southampton had 2 big chances, missed both of them. And I think it sums up Southampton's season, really, since before Christmas, even since the Liverpool game, since the one just after Christmas, they won 1-0. They've been very poor and have struggled. But Mikey says there they had more shots, but nothing that threatened bar one. Okay, well that's good to know.
But Joe, other than that, in the Premier League today, there was not much happening.
No.
There was not much going on. Arsenal won 2-0 against Brighton.
Yep.
They tried their best to get Europa Conference League. Before the game, said, Joe, what did I say to you?
You said, don't worry, they'll get their 2 goals after half time.
Yeah, I said exactly that. I said, don't worry, Arsenal are going to win 2-0. They'll score 2 goals in the second half and, get the victory. And that's exactly what they did. Arsenal are so predictable at times. It's predictably bad a lot of the times. But in this game, I was like, no, they're going to win 2-0. They'll score 2 goals in the second half because Mikel Arteta doesn't know how to encourage players to play for a full 90 minutes. He knows how to tell them to play for 45 minutes. They're like 7-year-old kids who play a 45-minute match rather than a 90-minute match. And they got their win. Other than that, we had Leeds getting a victory, a pretty solid win for them. 3-1 against West Brom, but again, a nothing match. We saw Man City smack Everton. Really poor from Everton. What's happened there?
I'm just going to look quickly at the stats. Let's just chat about this quickly because that's nuts. So part of me wonders were Man City putting on a show for their fans. 70% possession, 21 shots, 11 on target. That's the kind of rates you want to be looking at. Like Liverpool, for getting a new striker, that's what you kind of want to be looking at. 7 corners, 5 big chances, only one of those missed. Hit the post once. 92% passing accuracy. Very, very good set of stats here from Man City.
Yes. City played well, but they played full-strength team. All things considered, they were warming up for next Saturday to keep everybody fit. I imagine the team that started today would be largely similar to the team that will play, although I would imagine Gabriel Jesus might drop out and Bernardo Silva might come in, with De Bruyne maybe pushing a little bit further forward. But we saw an Everton team that started with Gylfi Sigurdsson and Tom Davies in midfield. When you've got players at your club like James Rodriguez, you've got Andre Gomez, you've got Alan, you've got Decore, and you start Sigurdsson and Davies. Oh, it must be gutting to be an Everton fan. Really bad, really bad. Richarlison and Calvert-Lewin had bad games. The defence had bad games. They didn't play with a right back today. Seamus Coleman was on the bench. Holgate played right back, and the Holgates were wide open because they conceded.
That's so bad.
Like Holgate, you're right, really bad. And I would be frustrated by that performance from Everton today.
Just before we answer Mikey's question that's on screen right now, big shout out to Sergio Aguero, who scored his 2 goals that he needed to break the record for the most Premier League goals for one club. Obviously, Shearer holds a record overall, but he scored 183 Premier League goals for Newcastle. Aguero has scored 184, so well done to him. Mikey asks, how would we rate Arteta? Do we think there's potential there for a decent manager? Luke's Betty's time has said what he thinks about Arteta, and I would love to hear you rant about it again.
Oh, Mikel Arteta is tactically inept. He is useless. He reminds me of watching Stoke when we finished ninth in the Premier League 3 seasons in a row, and then the season after got relegated because Mark Hughes genuinely couldn't do tactics. Watching Stoke was like him saying, "All right, folks, have a go, give it a go."
Yeah.
So happened because we had cracking players. We had Bojan, we had Arnautovic, we had Shaqiri, we had Afellay. We had some really, really good players on our team at Stoke. And it was like Mark Hughes didn't have a clue how to put them together. He's like, I know they're all good. Technically, they're fantastic. Have a go. See what you can do. And that's what it looks like Arteta. It's like he's putting a group of players out there. He's like, this guy's good. This guy's good on FIFA. This guy's got 20 finishing on Football Manager. Let's get all these players together. Let's get them out there and let's say, have a go. Arteta just doesn't seem to know tactics. And I'm so frustrated by him because I think Arsenal could have done so much. Arsenal could have got Europa League this season.
Yep, I agree.
But I will give him credit in that they have the second best form since Christmas in the Premier League in terms of results. But it's almost because people just then wrote them off. Mikey says there in chat, go out there and have fun, lads. It's like that. It's like your dad, your coach at the under-12s, and he's just like, right, lads, it's 0-0. Have a go. Go for it. Absolutely. So yeah, Arteta frustrates me. And Joe, if you say anything otherwise, leave right now.
He's the C-Tech Guardiola. That's what he tries to do.
Yes.
You know, his only experience is under one of the best coaches in the world, and therefore he clearly thinks highly of himself. He wasn't a great player. He wasn't the best of players. He was a Gylfi Sigurdsson type player, a wee bit better than that. He wasn't quite as mediocre, but you know what I mean? He wasn't like, I wouldn't put Arteta as any club legend, really.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I associate him more with Everton than I do Arsenal. But
me too.
So, and obviously, not all the best managers have been the best players, so that really is irrelevant. But I just wanted to make that clear, kind of. But
thanks for pointing it out, Joe. Really helpful.
No problem. I thought everybody deserved to know, obviously. And then, he does look out of his depth at Arsenal, and it's Arsenal are going through what United went through when they lost Alex Ferguson. It's kind of the same thing. That they're haven't found their identity since Wenger left, and that's not. I don't mean that's a problem having long-serving managers. Ideally, you want long-serving managers, who are there for years and years and years and are successful on multiple occasions. But whenever you get so used to that one style of play, and the manager inside out, and the owners know the manager inside out, once you lose that, it's very, very difficult to find that same level. So, look, Arteta it's another Lampard. It's another one of those. This is the era of young managers, really. That's what we're going through. You've got Nagelsmann is going to be taking over Bayern Munich, right? You have Rooney's at Derby. Lampard's going to be looking for a club again. And Gerrard's doing really well at Rangers. Although I would argue that's I think he's done a sensible thing. I think he's done a really, really sensible thing. Really sensible.
He did a Brendan Rodgers.
He did a Brendan Rodgers. Beautiful character. But yeah, I think that's kind of where I see Arteta. Elsewhere in the Premier League, Newcastle won 2-0 against Fulham. Joe Willock scored for the 7th game in a row, so he equalled Alan Shearer's goal-scoring record for Newcastle. So they're joint top in Newcastle for consecutive games. He also has scored 8 goals since he joined Newcastle, which is 3 more than any other Arsenal player has scored in the Premier League since he left, which is pretty nuts. And Newcastle actually finished.
Mikel Arteta, tactically inept.
But Newcastle actually finished 12th this season, which, is bizarre. We finished above Wolves. What? Mikey asked, has Joel become must buy for me? Absolutely, 100%. Because
tactically inept Arteta just said that he's coming back to the Emirates and he's not leaving.
Yeah, I know, but that's the problem. I think, Mikey. And I said this the other night. Had he not been playing as well, Newcastle would have signed him anyway because he's a young midfielder with big potential.
I don't know. I think Arsenal never had any intentions of selling him. I don't think that's changed. I think he was always planning on coming back because I think they do rate him and they love a homegrown talent other than Alex Iwobi, who they happily shipped out.
But I
And
think he loves it at Newcastle. I genuinely think Willock loves it up there. Like I
well,
think there's
I look at Joe Willock and I see a player who loves football. Full stop. I see a player
but
who
if he's
just
not going to
loves
get
it.
football, would he not prefer to?
Yeah. But I think he thinks he can. I think that's the
Yeah.
thing. I think he backs himself, especially now. He'll go back and be like, "Guys, I scored 8 goals."
But
Like
he
I'm a
looked
good
so
player.
out of his depth at Arsenal when he played. He didn't look ready for that level, and Arsenal haven't been at the best level.
But he
Let's
never
be
really
real.
had the chance. I don't think in enough run of games to actually play at the same time. It's a
But
weird balance. But
I think my point would be he's doing this at a club that A was not attack orientated, and B do not have great players, and he's doing this, and so like development wise for him, even if he did leave and go back to Arsenal, the 4 months he's been at Newcastle have probably been far better for his career than like anyone would have thought.
yeah,
I think overall we've been saved by the last 10 games. I went and looked back. So if we take the 3-0 loss of Brighton, that was 10 games ago. That looked like we were going to get relegated. Since then we've lost twice. That was to City and Arsenal. We drew with Liverpool, um, and Spurs, and then we won the rest. And we went from our two wins, our last two wins, have put us from 17th to 12th, and that's doubled our prize money. So from 8.5 million to 17 million, which is good in terms of maybe looking to sign in players. There is a belief in the fan base that the takeover could happen this summer. I'm pessimistic about that. I'm not really sure that's going to happen. But for me, I we're too quick to give out criticism and not quick enough to give out praise. And I do think that Steve Bruce and the coaching team deserve praise for this last 10 games. They've decided to completely change it up. They've played the same formation, but they've played more attacking. And it's made a massive, massive difference. The results that we've got have been fantastic. The wins, we were losing to teams like Fulham and Sheffield United before, so even beating them's a big thing. But then to go and beat West Ham, not to rub that in your face, Mikey, but to win that game, to draw with Spurs, to draw with Liverpool, there's a level there that we found in those last 10 games that really deserves a level of praise. So I think that's deserved. I didn't watch the game today because there was nothing attached to it at all, but I was delighted to see that we finished 12th. I was like, that's a really great season. Well done. 45 points, respectable too. I think that's more than we got last season as well. So fair play. I just want to briefly talk about really how bad the relegation teams actually have ended up being compared to the rest of the league. Set
yeah.
18th place, Fulham finished on 28 points. So 29 points is all you needed to stay up this season. What do you think about
Yeah, really poor. But I'm not surprised. It's the same with the championship currently and who's going up, because we see 2 teams who got relegated last season coming straight back up, and one more will not be that case. But it's because there hasn't been a lot of transfers, a lot
that?
of signings haven't taken place, and so the teams who went down didn't sell a lot, and so have Premier League squad depth, and so we're able to bounce straight back up. I think it's the same case with these 3 teams in that they just haven't been great in terms of 2 of them. Leeds did really well, and then Sheffield United just had an average squad that was
Yeah.
United like team unity kept them together. But yeah, hopefully people have enjoyed that 3-minute rant on Newcastle. I'm sure they have. Other than that, today Wolves lost to United. Really poor from Wolves. United played a second team. And that's really the football for today. Joe, I'm not going to lie. I am busting to go to the bathroom.
Okay.
So I think now would be a really great time for us to wrap up the show. There we go. There's an hour long of football chat. And I really need to pee.
Well, I just want to quickly say that United are the 4th team to go a whole season unbeaten away from home. Just want to quickly mention that.
There we go.
Only,
Stats
only
for
the
you
third,
all.
only the third club because Arsenal have done it twice. But the other club is Preston in the 1800s. So there you go.
There you go.
Look, a pleasure. I hope you have a nice pee.
I really will. I'm not going to lie. It's been a good 20 minutes since I needed to pee. So I will enjoy. But Joe, thank you as always. It's been a
Thank you.
pleasure. Feel
Thank you
free
for
to check
joining
us
me.
out on podcast providers. Get
Yep.
the bonus extra content. Today we answered a lovely question from a fan. So feel free to check that out on the intro on the podcast. Guys, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for listening. Joe, we'll see you on Wednesday, straight
Wednesday
after
night.
the Europa League final.
See you guys. Thank you so much for all your